So we're here with Keff Kaplan, who's the game director on Overwatch, the new shooter coming from Blizzard. Most people know Blizzard for World of Warcraft. What's been the biggest challenge in terms of applying the things that you guys know make WoW sticky and engaging? And what's been the biggest lesson in terms of applying those elements to a shooter?
I think the biggest difference between a game like World of Warcraft and a game like Overwatch is actually the scope. So WoW is a huge game, and I'm not talking in terms of subscribership or player base. I'm really just talking in terms of game systems and content. It's so big. A game like Overwatch is really tight in its scope. We're really shooting for just like competitive 6v6 shooter gameplay. So a real challenge when approaching it is, how do you get people to attach to the world like they did in World of Warcraft? The ways we're trying to do that in Overwatch is have really compelling heroes that they can identify with, give them great VO, really let them attach to the world and the characters, make it a bright, beautiful, inviting world. We're really lucky on the project to have Chris Metzen as our creative director and Bill Petrus as our art director. These are two of the main guys who did the world building for World of Warcraft, so they're taking a lot of the lessons that we learned on WoW and then we're trying to integrate them into Overwatch.
It's fairly obvious that there's a tonal difference between WoW and Overwatch. This high fantasy context and more of a real world superhero comic book. Is this you guys getting to scratch an itch that you've been wanting to do for a long time?
Overwatch is definitely a place that we've wanted to explore for some time. We talked a lot about working on fantasy worlds, and we've done that with Diablo and Warcraft, and we've talked about exploring space with StarCraft. And what's really interesting is you've got Planet Earth, and what could Blizzard do with Planet Earth? I think a lot of instincts immediately lead to wanting to do things post-apocalyptic or dystopian when you're talking about like what's the world going to be like in the future. And something that we really wanted to aspire to was creating a world that was hopeful and that people really enjoyed being in. And kind of the catchphrase that we use is make sure that the future in Overwatch is a future that is worth fighting for.
It seems like this would be a game that's perfect for consoles. What are you guys thinking there? I mean, it took a couple of steps for Diablo to kind of reach its fullest potential on consoles. Do you feel like you can apply that to making Overwatch come to consoles? Should that be the case?
When we approach any new game at Blizzard, we think about the game itself first and then figure out what the platforms are going to be sort of afterwards, after the game starts to take more of a form that we understand it better in. We did this with Hearthstone. I think that's actually the most recent example to really study. Initially, Hearthstone was completely developed to be a PC title, and around midway through the development cycle, we started realizing actually the shape that the game is taking, this would be amazing on the iPad, it would be amazing on Android tablets. And now we're also seeing, just announced here at PAX that, hey, this thing's going to come out on phones and it's going to be a great mobile game as well. I think the same approach is sort of happening with Overwatch. First and foremost, we really considered it a PC title and we wanted to develop it for PC. But the more it sort of comes to life before us, we're all seeing the potential. And I think the lessons that we learned and the success that we enjoyed with Reaper of Souls on the PS4, the Xbox One, and the previous generation of consoles have led us to really, understand that market better, be very interested in it, and are very open-minded about what the future could bring for Overwatch.
This is obviously a multiplayer-focused game. Are you guys thinking about single-player content, whether there's going to be something to pull the player through the world? Since there's obviously world building is so much a part of this, and the reveal trailer was all about this kind of story through the viewpoint of a young boy who was missing these heroes. So is there going to be a single-player component to pull the player through that?
Right now, the focus of Overwatch is completely on competitive multiplayer. Now, we're going to try to make that as approachable for people as possible. But it's really interesting because at Blizzard, we so value storytelling and world building. If you look at all of our sort of universes that we explore, it's always a huge value of ours. So we've been talking a lot about how will story manifest itself in Overwatch. I think it's going to happen in a couple of ways. One, we're trying to do a lot of what we call contextual or visual storytelling. So just by being in the maps, looking around the levels, picking up on cues, listening to what the characters say, we're trying to inject as much story there as possible that players will just sort of naturally absorb. The other thing, and I'm glad you brought it up, was things like our announcement trailer. We had so much fun making that trailer. The director, Jeff Chamberlain, was amazingly talented, and we loved watching him sort of bring the Overwatch universe to life. And after that trailer, or even during it, we kind of realized, like, hey, we'd like to do a lot more like this. So I think you can look for Overwatch storytelling to evolve in kind of two different ways, like in the game, and then what media sources are there outside of the game that we can also sort of build this franchise on. Now, long term, I think a lot of us, because of our backgrounds and the games that we've made at Blizzard, we would love to see some sort of single player element perhaps be explored someday, but right now the focus is completely multiplayer.